I keep quite a few avocado trees. I keep some indoors like this one here, and I keep some outdoors like this one here. And you might be surprised to learn that the way that I care for them changes depending on where I keep them. And today we're going to be talking about that and hopefully give you some ideas of what you would like to do moving forward. G'day avocado enthusiasts, welcome back to Scott Grows an Avocado Tree. Today we're going to be talking about the different ways that I care for my indoor and my outdoor trees. These trees are about the same age. They were started probably within a couple of months about 2 years ago, and they look quite different. This one here, I keep in a cash pose situation. I keep this one indoors. This lives in my main living space and it's looking nice. It's got plenty of leaves. It's branching off here because Magnus the cat pruned it a little while ago. There's a video in the description below if you're curious about that. Then we get to my outdoor tree. This one is one that we're following along with the Avocado Diaries series, and it's looking quite a lot taller than the indoor tree, because it is, and it has fewer leaves, but the leaves are larger, and there may be some reasons for that which we will get to in due course. I will make a note here that both of these trees are kept in containers. All of my trees at the moment are kept in containers. I don't currently have a space where I'm able to plant a tree in the ground, so if you're looking for advice about planting trees on the ground, I'm afraid that this video isn't for you, though obviously trees prefer it if the conditions are good for them. And I should also mention that depending on where you are in the world, the advice in this video is going to be a bit different as well. Context is really important, especially when we're considering keeping plants outside. I live in Melbourne, Australia. It's a very temperate region. It doesn't get snow. We get a few frost days per year, and it does get quite warm during the summer. My indoor space, my home, kind of hovers in humidity between 45 and 60%, depending on the day, depending on the weather, depending on the time of year, and outdoors is similar-ish to that. So really, the conditions that I have for growing plants are pretty good. And in this video, I'm going to talk about how I care for my indoor and outdoor trees under these conditions. And some of it will probably be applicable to you in your situation, but some of it may not. If you live in a place that gets snow, for example, you're not going to want to keep your outdoor trees outdoors all year round because they will die if they get too cold. They can handle some frosts. There's a link in the description below to a video I made about that one, but they cannot handle getting frozen solid. They cannot handle snow. They will just die. Without any further ado though, let's talk about how I care for these trees differently. Let's start with something which is probably the one that I need to think about the most in an ongoing sense, and that is watering. Watering is really important for plants. Without water, they die. But if we overwater plants, especially avocado trees, they will also die. Avocados are super susceptible to root rot, and we want to make sure that we are not overwatering them. These are both planted in a similar soil. I've got about 1 part coconut peat, 1 part just cheap potting mix, and then 1 part, maybe even 2 parts perlite to really help things drain really easily. But how do I water them? I water them fairly differently. My indoor plant, I want to keep free of fungus gnats. I hate fungus gnats, and I am in a fungus gnat free household. I've been fungus gnat free for a couple of years, and I intend to keep it that way. And so as a result, yeah, it's in a cash po, and I bottom water this one. I fill up my sink and I water it so that the top of the soil does not get wet. There's a video about how I water my indoor trees in the description below, and that's not something that I consider for my outdoor tree. I'm not aware of fungus gnats being a massive problem for people keeping their plants outside, possibly due to the changing of weather conditions, the wind is too much, I'm not actually sure, but even if it were a problem with this tree, I don't think I'd mind too much because fungus gnats don't actually bother plants. They're more just annoying for humans who have to put up with them. Because it's outside, it's not something that I need to worry about. So I don't worry about bottom watering this. It's either a watering can or a hose, or something which we cannot do with the indoor trees. the rain. The watering for the indoor tree stays pretty consistent year round. I'll monitor the moisture level in the soil. I use moisture meters, I use the droopiness of the leaves, I use the weight of the pot to get a bit of an idea of that one. And as it's now really filled out the pot, I'm kind of watering it weekly, and that won't change too much over the course of the year. As it's warmer in summer, I might reduce the amount of time between watering a little bit, but generally it's kind of weekly, maybe every 5 days in the warmer months of the year. Not the same for my outdoor tree. In summer, this pot is getting dried out pretty well every day. So during the peak months of summer, the days where it's staying above 30, 35, even up to 40 degrees Celsius, this needs watering pretty well every day. But that's really just through our summer months. I have not manually watered this plant myself in months. I'm filming this in June and we haven't had summer in several months. It's winter now in Australia, and I have not watered this one since probably March. The reason why is because we've had quite a bit of rain and it's not drying out as fast. So this time of year, probably 7 or 8 months of the year, I am letting the rain water my outdoor trees, which is a really easy way of keeping plants, just letting the rain do its job. Obviously, if I left my indoor tree 7 or 8 months, it would die. So that's watering. But let's talk about the different lighting conditions, because light indoors and light outdoors are quite different. Avocados are trees. They need quite a bit of light to grow and support the larger organism that they are. But they don't like to get full sun all day. If they get full sun all day, they will get sunburned, and that will lead to possibly getting infections, damaged tissue that will not be able to be repaired, and in extreme circumstances, death, which we want to avoid. Avocados in the wild grow in groves, and so they are protected by the trees around them from extreme sun. As a result, we need to make sure that we're giving our avocado trees the best conditions. It's something we need to think about for our outdoor trees more than our indoor trees. I'll talk about the outdoor trees first, and then I'll talk about my indoor trees. Outdoor trees, I am keeping in a spot which gets minimal direct light. During the summer, I don't mind it getting a couple of hours during the day, but only a couple of hours, and preferably in the morning. The house that I moved into late last year, we have a garden on the south side of the house because we're in the southern hemisphere. That means that it doesn't really get direct sun during the cooler months of the year, and it'll get a little bit during the summer, which is fine. I'm also growing them in a grove, which is good for the trees. There's a couple of reasons why, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But for the avocado tree indoors, you might think that because avocados, they will get sunburnt, they don't like full sun all day, so they need low light environments. That's not actually true. Avocado trees at the end of the day are still trees, and they need a fair bit of light to stay alive. And indoors, if we put them in a shadier or lower light environment, they're going to die, or they're going to become elongated. They're not going to have many leaves. The leaves are going to be small, and they're going to be very slender and flimsy because they're trying to find light. They grow in groves in the wild, and that's an adaptation that they will do or put in place to reach light. If they sense there's not enough around, they'll try and find it. So indoors, I actually keep this one in the brightest spot that I can find. That's not going to be as intense even now though, as being in the shade outdoors, just because it's coming through windows and so on. So even though I'm keeping it in the brightest spot that I can, I still don't think it's probably quite getting as much light as I would like it to have. The reason I can tell that is because of the size of the leaves. The outdoor trees' leaves are less in number at the moment, but the leaves themselves are larger. Whereas the indoor one, the leaves are smaller. Even the biggest leaves are smaller than the outdoor one. For avocado trees, it's not unusual for trees in lower light environments to not produce larger leaves. They will continue to try and get taller to get to the light, and they're not going to put a lot of energy into making those big leaves, which can be those solar panels, to absorb light and do that photosynthesis. Whereas the outdoor tree, it has got enough sun, and it can therefore make bigger leaves. So the light conditions can be quite different. I keep my avocado trees outdoors in a fairly shady spot. It might get a couple of hours of direct light, whereas my indoor trees I want to find as bright a spot as I can. So that's lighting conditions. Now these trees are not in their native environments, they are in pots, and therefore feeding and fertilizing is something that I need to consider. Now actually the way that I will do that for either of these is reasonably similar. I like to use a slow release fertilizer, and also I'll add a fertilizer in often when I am watering. So a water soluble fertilizer I will use as well whilst I'm watering, especially during the warmer months. But actually it's fairly similar the way that I fertilize each of these trees. I am realizing that I probably should have fed the one outdoors a little more, especially during the summer. The leaves are looking a little paler than the indoor one, and I think that's probably because it's a little bit nutrient deficient, especially things like nitrogen. So as we warm up and get into spring and summer, I will be watering this one a little heavier than I did last year. But feeding really is reasonably similar for each of these, but something that's not similar are the kind of pests that I will see with these trees. I've already mentioned in this video about how I water this one differently to avoid fungus gnats, but the kind of pests we get for indoor and outdoor trees can be quite different. I'm actually less worried about the pests on my indoor tree, even though there are pests that we typically won't see on outdoor trees. I've never had a problem with mealybugs or spider mites on my outdoor plants. I'm not sure if it's the heat, I'm not sure if it's the cold weather over the winter, but it just doesn't seem to be as much of a problem. Similarly, I've never had to worry about slugs, snails, or caterpillars on my indoor tree. You'll notice that my outdoor tree has got some leaves that have been eaten. And I'm not exactly sure what that was, whether it was a caterpillar, whether it was a slug or a snail, but something has eaten holes in some of the leaves, which is not ideal, obviously, and we have not seen anything like that with our indoor trees. So I have a different kind of pest routines to avoid those kinds of things. I typically use snail baits and things for my outdoor plants. I do not need to worry about that one for my indoor plants though. So the way that I treat pests is quite different because we're dealing with different kinds of pests. With pests out of the way, let's talk about heat. So avocados originally come from the tropical regions of South America. They are not adapted very well to extreme cold temperatures. Generally, most avocado varieties are able to withstand cold weather and even some frost conditions. They don't want too heavy a frost, but they cannot stand snow. Getting totally frozen, they will just die. They are evergreen trees. They don't have the adaptations to be able to survive in extreme colds, and they will just die in extreme cold weather. So if you live in a place that gets snow, then keeping your trees indoor over the winter certainly is a really, really good idea. Otherwise, you will end up with dead trees. On the other end of things, I live in Australia. We get days of up to 40 degrees Celsius regularly during the summer, and it's pretty intense for a plant. You know, the rate at which they photosynthesize decreases above 40 degrees Celsius, and it's really intense for them. So making sure that I am giving the outdoor tree enough water during the summer is really important. During heat waves, they'll get water multiple times a day, which is fairly, resource intense, but that's the cost of keeping these things alive when it is very, very hot. On the other side of things, heat is not such a concern when we're indoors. When we're using things like heating and cooling, it can dry the air out, but I find that in my house, it doesn't change the humidity drastically enough that it's causing a problem. Though occasionally you'll get browning edges if the humidity fluctuates too quickly. And if you're wondering about the brown leaves on my little tree, that is during a period last year where it got underwatered and the ends of some leaves died off. So watering, light conditions, fertilizing, pests, and heat, they're kind of 5 of the considerations that you might think about when making the decision of whether to keep your avocado trees indoors or outdoors. If we're thinking long term, like you are hoping that your avocado trees may grow fruit. Now, growing avocado trees on homegrown trees is possible, though it does take a long time. That is my long-term goal for some of my trees to grow fruit. It may not be great tasting fruit, but I want to get there. There is another link in the description going to a video that I made about how and when and what you need to do for homegrown trees to grow fruit. But we are more likely to see fruit on outdoor trees, not just because, better lighting conditions and watering conditions potentially, but because flowers are more likely to be fertilized. For a flower to turn into a fruit, it must be fertilized. And that generally doesn't happen indoors unless you do it manually with a brush. And there are videos out there, I've not got one, about people doing this one. Lots of people in the indoor plant community who are hoping to grow their own seeds from their houseplants do this. You know, I've got lots of people in my friendship circles who do this with their Hoya. It's really interesting, it is possible, but in the outdoor world, insects do this job for us. I do mean to make a video about this at some point, but the way that avocado trees bear fruit is really cool in that they don't self-pollinate and they need to have another tree nearby that has the corresponding or reproductive organs in the flower available to cross-pollinate with each other. And insects are what does that. So if you're looking to grow fruit on your avocado trees, much more likely to happen on trees grown outdoors. Long term, you know, trees also get quite large, and indoors you just may not have the space for a massive tree or the lighting conditions to keep it healthy, or be able to, you know, drag its pot around to bottom water it if that's something that you continue to do like I may be. I'm not sure if this one in 10 years will still be getting bottom watered. We'll see how we go. So that's a bit of a rundown of some of the things that you may consider when thinking about whether to keep your trees indoors or outdoors. And depending you are in the world, some of this advice in this video may be more applicable to you. If you are looking for my personal preference about where I prefer to keep my avocado trees, well, aside, I like having avocado trees around. I think they're beautiful plants, but in terms of care, I prefer keeping my trees outdoors. I've had far fewer problems with my outdoor trees. I have killed many trees due to root rot indoors compared to my outdoor trees where I've killed very few. I've done lots of learning and that's why I use so much perlite, but I have had fewer problems with my outdoor trees. It's nice to not have to worry about watering during it's nice not having to worry about watering throughout most of the year. And I can make it work during summer, especially if I get onto having an automated watering system. So personally, I've had a better time keeping them outdoors, but it's certainly possible to do either. But I realize that I have avocado enthusiasts watching this video from all over the world, from different climate zones, and have different experiences. And some, I've seen your pictures, have much more success keeping your trees indoors than I do. If you've got any advice, or if you think I missed out on anything in this video, please put it in the comments below. I'd love to see it. And that's where we'll leave this video today. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please feel free to subscribe to Scott Grows an Avocado Tree, where I make videos about avocados, avocado related things, and keeping avocado trees. I'm also on Instagram at Scott Grows an Avocado Tree. And if you enjoyed this video but you'd like to see more videos where I talk about other things that aren't just avocados, feel free to check out my new channel. That's pretty cool. It just hit 1,000 subscribers very recently, and I'm really enjoying making videos on all kinds of things over there. So please feel free to go and check that one out. I'm gonna leave it there for today though, folks. Thank you so much for watching. Take care, and we'll see you next time.
Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree. Scott grows an avocado tree.